Okay, everybody, welcome to this discussion on Bank of North America, the first attempt at a central bank in the U.S. This is going to be part one of a series on central banking in this country and how not only was this an ongoing effort to create such a thing throughout this country's history, but it was an effort that began uh, right from the beginning. They tried to get a central bank here right from the very beginning at the time of the revolution. So it was their intent to have such a thing, just as they had over in England, the Bank of England, right? And there's a lot of people that are aware of that, when it comes to the first bank of the United States, the second bank of the United States, which I'll get into later. But even before that, even before both of those, there was what was called the Bank of North America, the very first attempt at a central bank in this country. The Bank of North America was, again, the first chartered bank in the United States, and it served as the country's first de facto central bank. It was not anywhere near what they wanted it to be, but it was a step in the direction of what they were hoping it would become in a short time. If the early American public was dumbed down enough that they could pull it off, but they found out soon that it wasn't quite so dumbed down, and its politicians uh, weren't as bought off as they had hoped they were, so they'd be able to get away with it. Chartered by the Congress of the Confederation on May 26, 1781, and opened for business in Philadelphia on January 7, 1782, it was created with the stated purpose of helping to pay for the debt incurred by the Revolutionary War. They always do that, right? That's always the reason, or not always, but often the reason. They'll create a debt, and then they'll create the bank uh, so it looks feasible. Oh, yeah, it looks acceptable, even desirable, right? Yeah, we need a bank, to help pay off our debt, to give us the loans, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Of course, its real intent was to hijack the monetary system of the new republic just as it was getting off the ground. The bank's founding was based on a plan presented by Superintendent of Finance Robert Morris on May 17th of 1781, including recommendations by Revolutionary era founding father Alexander Hamilton, who was appointed the first U.S. Secretary of the Treasury by Mr. High-level Freemason George Washington. Hamilton, of course, was a Rothschild puppet, a Rothschild agent, and a major proponent in the later founding of the first Bank of the United States, the second attempt at a U.S. central bank. When the Bank of North America wasn't working out, he proposed that, yet another step toward a fully fledged central bank, all at the behest of Mr. Hamilton. But anyway, this first attempt, the Bank of North America, at such a central bank, failed primarily because the Pennsylvania government objected to its privileges and reincorporated it under state law, making it unsuitable as a national bank under the U.S. Constitution. So again, there were still some honest and alert politicians, and the general public, too, was far more honest and alert and vigilant than, the bulk of today's population. Congress later chartered the first Bank of the United States in 1791, while the Bank of North America continued on for a time as a private concern. So they phased that one out and phased this new entity in But that wasn't to last either, as we'll see. But anyway, let's take a closer look at this first attempt at a central bank in the U.S., the Bank of North America. In May of 1781, Alexander Hamilton revealed that he had recommended Robert Morris for the position of superintendent of finance of the United States during the previous summer, when the Constitution of the Articles of Confederation were being solidified. He also proceeded to lay out a proposal for a national bank that would also serve as a de facto central bank. Morris corresponded with Hamilton previously on the subject of funding the war, and immediately drafted a legislative proposal based on Hamilton's suggestion, and then submitted it to Congress. Morris persuaded Congress to charter the Bank of North America. His friend, Dr. Hugh Shiel, Shiell, paid £500 to the capital stock. Morris made his initial fortune off of military contracting during the Revolutionary War, and was a huge fan of big government, a federalist, just like Hamilton. The charter of this bank required that private investors had to provide $400,000 for the initial subscription. When Morris was unable to raise that kind of money, he used his political influence to make up the shortfall out of government funds. On a maneuver that was nothing less than legalized embezzlement, he took the gold that had been lent to the United States from France and had it deposited in the bank. What a shyster. Morris generally is a Jewish name, by the way. Then, using this as a fractional reserve base, he simply created the money that was needed for the subscription and lent it to himself and his associates with the gold as backing, right? There's your power of secret science at play there. The original charter, as outlined by Hamilton, called for the disbursement of 1,000 shares priced at $400 each. Sleazebag Benjamin Franklin purchased a single token share as a sign of good faith to Federalists and their new bank. Hamilton used his pseudonym Publius, later immortalized in the Federalist Papers, advocating in the late 1780s for adoption of the United States Constitution to endorse the bank, again under that pen name. Just notice the scum who are endorsing this bank, right? William Bingham, rumored to be the richest man in America after the Revolutionary War, purchased 9.5% of the available shares. By the way, that would be a stiff competition, because it was also said of George Washington that he was the richest man. But anyway, Bingham was a member of the Committee of Secret Correspondence, a definite insider conspirator in helping to foment the revolution. The greatest share in this bank, however, 63.3%, was purchased on behalf of the United States government by Robert Morris, using a gift in the form of a loan from France and a loan from the Netherlands. This had the effect of capitalizing the bank with large deposits of gold and silver coin and bills of exchange. So it artificially propped it up, or illegitimately propped it up. He then issued new paper currency backed by this supply, a fiat currency. Yeah. And who printed the first bills? Conspirator Benjamin Franklin with his printing press. That's who. Look at the collaborators here. Thomas Willing, a twice former mayor of Philadelphia and partner with Morris in an import-export firm that once had dominated the city's slave trade, was named this bank's first president. He held that office from 1781 to 1791, being succeeded by John Nixon, and moving immediately on to become the first president of the First Bank of the United States when that opened its doors, a position he held from 1791 to 1807. They always call upon their little fellow sleazy buddies for jobs like that, right? The bank issued its own notes that superseded the troubled continental currency bills. These notes were printed on paper with colored fibers pressed into the reverse side as an anti-counterfeiting measure. Funny, though, because these notes were themselves legalized counterfeit, just like our current Federal Reserve notes, right? They were fiat, banknotes. So it wasn't just under the Federal Reserve that we had this kind of system in place. It was in place right from the very beginning, and it was intended to remain, the nation's currency. Didn't go quite so well. Unlike the continental bills, the new notes carried a promise to pay silver on demand. They always start out that way, don't they? To fool the public. But anyway, despite these changes, the bank had difficulty at first in persuading people of its alleged good credit. And at one point, it actually employed repossessors to follow people who had redeemed notes and to urge them to deposit the money back. You can imagine that. They didn't want the gig to go up on them. They didn't want their little scam to be uncovered. To promote the impression that it had a large reserve, the bank made a show of moving cash boxes to and from its cellar just for the sake of illusion, right? Can you believe this crap? This went on right from the beginning, guys. The blood in the field from the Revolutionary War wasn't even dry yet, and already they're pulling this kind of crap. Once the stock was fully subscribed and paid, doubts surfaced, and doubts subsided, I should say, because of the illusion game that they were playing, initially anyway. And the note rose to par value. Once the people got suckered, that is. By 1783, several states, including Massachusetts, had enacted legislation allowing Americans to pay taxes with Bank of North America notes, giving them more of an illusion of a reliable legal tender, right? But look how this whole thing was orchestrated. It was big money or big money fakers in bed with big government. And so the government, buttressing. This was the case from the beginning. They wanted to set us up with this fake frickin' currency, and did for a time have us set up with it right from the start. In the economic turmoil that had followed the American Revolutionary War, the banks' strictness in collecting debts had drawn opposition from Pennsylvania residents who petitioned the Pennsylvania General Assembly to revoke the state charter granted to it in 1782. They were starting to catch on. They realized something wasn't right here. The charter was revoked in 1785, although the bank had continued to operate with difficulty under its congressional charter, and then under a Delaware charter. The following year, the Pennsylvania General Assembly had granted a new charter with several restrictions, including that it could not trade any merchandise other than bullion. So because of these difficulties, it was realized that a new precursor to a full central bank needed to be created. And so Hamilton moved quickly to create this different bank now, the first bank of the United States, with the illusion that it's a completely different entity now. You can trust this one. We know you were suspicious of the Bank of North America, so put your faith in this one now. It's completely revamped. Nothing was revamped. It was to operate, on the same principle. Fiat currency, a system of enslaving usurious debt. And that will be the topic of our next video. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. We'll catch you then. Take care.